Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's Digital Airstrike webinar, where a top dealer is going to reveal his 10 top tips for BDC and Internet success. My name is Eliana Raggio and I'll be your moderator today. And today's webinar is brought to you by Digital Airstrike. For anyone who isn't familiar with Digital Airstrike, we are the #1 social media intelligent lead response and consumer engagement partner in the industry. No one else even comes close, with fantastic customer service and awards too numerous to mention. We help our clients connect with their consumers at every step of the customer journey. And we're going to go to the next slide any second now. Our 5-star online reputation experiences drive awareness, engagement, and loyalty for our dealer clients, and our unparalleled track record of innovation helps over 5,000 businesses across the US and Canada boost their sales and profitability. For the most complete consumer engagement solution and the most powerful digital retailing platform that comes with an industry-leading performance guarantee, you're going to want to partner with the company that has the longest track record of success, Digital Airstrike. To find out more, visit us at digitalairstrike.com. And I want to let you know, we are exhibiting and presenting at the upcoming Digital Marketing Strategies Conference. It's coming up this weekend, May 19th to the 21st in beautiful Napa, California. I'm going to be presenting as well. I'm actually going to be leading a discussion about digital retailing. It's a hot topic in the industry, and we're going to have automotive industry leaders Adam Sims and Steve Lace among the people that I will be having a fireside chat with. And not to be outdone, Alexi Veneri, our CEO, is also going to be on a digital retailing panel as well. All of that awesomeness happens on Tuesday, May 21st. So if you're going to be there, we'd love it if you'd stop by and see us take the stage in person. More on that later. We have a great show in store for you today. We are very pleased to have Jason Cohen as our presenter today. Jason Cohen is an 18-year dealership veteran running the sales and service BDC departments at DCH Paramus Honda, the flagship store of Lithia Motors, Inc., and a top 10 volume Honda store in the U.S., along with DCH of Nanuet. He's a rare combination of savvy salesperson and BDC guru, allowing him to excel in all aspects of sales process, business development, and digital marketing. Jason was recently a featured speaker at the Digital Dealer Conference and the cover story of Car Wars Crisp magazine. And you can look for him on an upcoming cover story of Digital Dealer magazine, too. He can be reached at jcohen@dchusa.com. Now, during the presentation, we want you to ask some questions. So please use the question feature located on the corner of your screen to submit them. At the end of the presentation, we're going to answer those questions of general interest. If we're unable to get to your question live, we're going to try to respond by email later today. Don't forget, a link to download a copy of this webinar recording will also be emailed to you later today for your reference. Feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. And guess what? Woo! We are giving away one heck of a prize today. One lucky webinar attendee is going to win a free month of ResponsePath, the leading intelligent messaging platform in the automotive industry. You can show your inventory, capture leads 24/7, and jump into any conversation. And its beautifully intuitive software is built to grow your dealership. But only one of you is going to get this 1 month free. It's a $799 value. Yes, this is an awesome prize, not just for you, but for your dealership. You have to be on the live broadcast to win it, though, so stay tuned for your chance to win this awesome prize today. Also, at the conclusion of this webinar, you're going to get a short survey, so fill it out. We're always looking for quality feedback from the audience, and we want to hear what you have to say. And hey, do you tweet much? We hope you do. We'd love to see what you have to say about today's presentation, so please tag us in it. You can use hashtag #DASwebinar. I'm at Eliana Raggio. You can also hit up Jason Cohen at his brand new Twitter handle. That's right. He's got a brand new one, so please friend him on it and follow him on it. It's at BDC_guru. So go follow him. He's going to be putting out a lot of amazing information on Twitter, and we look forward to seeing what you're saying. All right, everyone, let's get started. Let's hear from Jason Cohen, who's going to reveal his top 10 tips for BDC and Internet success. Jason, I know it took a little bit of arm twisting on my part, but I'm so glad you're here to share what everyone wants to know from you. You have run arguably one of the most longest tenured and successful BDC departments in the United States for Lithia Motors, and you are sharing some secrets today. Jason Cohen, I know it's your very first webinar, but I'm putting you on the spot. Welcome to a Digital Airstrike webinar. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. I am great, and I am very excited. I've been attending your webinars for years, and this is a dream come true, being able to work it with you. So thank you very much.
I'm excited. I'm very excited because I did get a sneak peek at your presentation deck. And I'm not kidding, folks. There is so many nuggets of gold in there. You're just going to have to wait and see what Jason is going to reveal today. And I say we get right to it. So why don't you tell this very hungry audience what the kinds of things that you're going to be covering today?
Absolutely. So when it comes to being successful with internet sales and or BDC staff, there's a ton of things that you could do to increase your productivity, and kind of condense it to 10. And as you can see on your screen, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but essentially it comes down to people and process. Every department that I've been asked to consult with, essentially the way to make it successful is to have the right people. We're going to talk about how to hire the right people, develop them, train them, hold them accountable, and obviously having great processes as well. And that combination of the right people and the right process is the secret to success. All right, and you can see my 10 steps right here. We're going to go into each one in detail, and then after that we will be giving away the prize, and then I'll have some time for questions and answers, whatever you want to ask me.
That's a great idea. All right, audience, don't be shy, because Jason is a wealth of knowledge, seriously, a fountain. So put in those questions, and we are looking forward to a really great Q&A session after the presentation. Where do we start?
All right, let's talk about, I'm sorry, before we even jump into it, let's start with a poll question.
Let's find
out. What's important to our listeners. Let's find out.
Let's find out. All right, audience, we got 3 poll questions coming at you today, and the first one is on the screen now. We need to know what is your biggest challenge. So when it comes to BDC and Internet, what do you feel is your biggest challenge? Please select one of the following. Now, granted, not all 10 of the things that Jason is going to cover are on here today, but he figured these were the top 5 for him, and he figured you might feel the same way. So maybe one of these is one that he will spend a little bit more time on, or really concentrate on with regards to that. So which one of these? Finding and hiring the right people. Oh, the votes are coming in fast. I love it. Proper training for the staff, lead response and follow-up, overcoming objections, interesting, or the performance metrics, those KPIs, those important things that you have to monitor so that you know whether or not you're doing the right thing. Once we get a majority, oh my goodness, almost everyone has voted. I feel like there's like a handful of people who haven't voted yet, but I will let this go on for just a couple more seconds, and then we will close this poll and share the results. And I gotta say, you picked the right 5, because if I'm going to be honest, it's kind of evenly split. So let's close this poll and let's see what everyone else had to say. Here we go. Jason, you ready for this?
Yeah.
All right. So the question is, when it comes to BDC and Internet, what do you feel is your biggest challenge? Only 11% of today's audience said finding and hiring the right people. Interesting. 19% of today's audience said proper training for the staff. 26% of today's audience, and in this particular poll question, believe it or not, 26% is the majority of today's audience. They said lead response and follow-up. Don't worry, we're going to hit on that today. 22% of today's audience said overcoming objections. And another 22% of today's audience said the metrics. What are we supposed to be monitoring so that we know we are on the right track? So first of all, audience, thank you so much for participating. I almost had 100% participation on that poll question. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to come up with for the next 2 poll questions. And Jason, what did you think about these results? Is this what you were expecting?
No. I mean, obviously they're all very important, but with the job market the way it is, I thought hiring people would be higher up on that list. So I guess everyone has some good staff there, and that's good to know.
That is good to know. All right, let's move on. Yeah. And let's see. I guess we're moving on to step number 1, tip number 1.
Yeah. So just to preface by saying that my order, the top 10 tips, isn't necessarily in order of importance. They're all very important. But I would say if it came down to it, I consider hiring the right staff, having the right people as the most important thing to me, because once you have the right staff, everything else I'm going to teach you becomes easier. So it definitely has an influence on the other steps. I like to consider my employees our number one asset. And really without our staff, without, good staff, where would we be? The dealerships wouldn't be successful, or your departments wouldn't be as successful as they have to be without that. So I like to remind them how much I appreciate them. Let me start by saying, if you're shorthanded, don't ever make a desperation hire. I made that mistake. I'm sure a lot of people on this call have done the same thing. You're in the summer, it's a busy time, and someone left, and you want to fill that position ASAP, and you basically put the first body in there. And what typically happens is that a few months down the line, that turns into a bad decision and causes more problems later on. So I feel that it's better to run shorthanded than to put the wrong person in. Right? But if you are shorthanded, there's also opportunities to accommodate that by automating. And there's a lot of programs, including Digital Airstrike, provide some great AI tools to help you handle the volume leads and basically get you involved once someone requires personal attention. Don't only look for candidates that worked at dealerships prior. Now, I'm not saying don't hire candidates that have prior experience. That's a great experience and should be some of your best hires. But just because they worked at a dealership doesn't mean they did it well. And I've seen a lot of managers that I've worked with that tell me I won't even call them for the interview unless they have prior dealership experience, or I'll see it actually posted in the ad, only apply if you have prior experience, and you're shortchanging yourself. All right. So some of my best hires have been, what we call green peas, that we were able to train the right way, the way we wanted to do it, and they ended up becoming excellent employees. So, again, so I'm not saying don't hire people with experience. I'm saying don't make that your only criteria. All right. Other areas that you could look for people when you're interviewing, I find the best to find candidates that had some call center experience or worked in retail. Anyone that had telemarketing experience, collections. These are tough jobs. A lot of cold calling. It has some great experience. Customer service jobs where you're handling a high volume of calls all day long. So you want someone that's comfortable on the phone. Sometimes face-to-face roles, retail, working, selling, working at a Nordstrom's or Macy's or something like that, when you're seeing a lot of customers all day long, that could also translate well. But essentially you want, someone that has that business to consumer experience and not afraid to talk with people.
I'm going to say, for those three that you listed, working at a dealership is definitely a step up.
Yeah. And frankly, I've found great people just going out to dinner, and you find someone that's a waiter or waitress, and you really like the way they interact with you. That's your time. You give them your business card and say, hey, you're looking for a career change. Let's talk. Hotel staff as well is another example of where I've found some good people. All right. So like anything, to me, the interview is a process, right? And the better your process, the better your interviewing going, and the better your qualifications of that, pre-qualifications of that potential employee will be. So be prepared. Don't just go into the interview and wing it. I see so many managers, and I don't blame them. There's very little training to teach someone how to interview. I've actually attended courses that give me tips on how to be a better interviewer. That's really important. So if you dedicate a little time beforehand to find the right person, then your job becomes easier later on having the right people. So it's definitely worth investing into that. Be prepared. Now, I have a list of questions. I've been using them so long that now I don't really need the list anymore. But there's resources you can find online, questions to ask for sales jobs or phone jobs, and pinpoint the ones that you like, highlight them, and make sure you ask them during the interview. All right. I'm a strong believer having multiple people interview the candidate. All right. So my rule of thumb is I need 3 thumbs ups. I have at least 3 people interview, and if all 3 have to be in agreement in order for me to move forward. It doesn't have to be managers. Another tip I do is sometimes if I'm interviewing for a BDC role, I'll grab one of my senior BDC reps and have them sit and interview with me. And they may not necessarily know what questions to ask, but I want them to sit and watch and then get their feedback afterwards. And you'd be surprised at how their intuition, they'll know if they feel that person would be a good fit in that department. So obviously it's important that everyone in the department gets along and they work together as a team. So you don't want to bring in someone that would disrupt that. You want someone that fits your culture, your company culture, your department culture. So definitely a big proponent of that. Right. Also, I find a lot of managers, again, due to lack of training, not knowing what to ask, what questions to ask, they'll just look at a resume and just basically spend the entire interview, asking about the resume. All right. I don't find the resume to be that important. I'll review beforehand and look for things that I want to know more about. So, just to give me a prep on what to ask them. But once I'm in the interview, I ask very few questions about their resume. And the reason is this. When you're interviewing for a job, you're putting on your best show, right? And that's the same with your resume. You're exaggerating. Everyone does. There's nothing wrong with it, but you're exaggerating what's in that resume to make yourself look good, right? So I'm gonna take it, with a little trepidation of what's true and what's not. But to me, frankly, what's more important is hiring that person based on their personality and their potential, what they could be, not what they've done in the past. All right, and so I always say that their character traits are much more important than their past experience. All right.
Okay.
Let's face it, most of the job, they're going to learn on the job, right? I mean, that's true pretty much any job. I've read a stat that's 75, or another report said 80% of the job is learned while you're on the job, right? So we're going to teach them what to do while they're here. So that's why I'm not so much concerned about the past experience. What's more important to me is those intangibles, what I can't teach them, right? Their communication skills, that they have a sense of humor, things like that. The ability to be outgoing and communicate well with others. Those are the things that you're looking for. The positive attitude, right? You can't teach someone attitude, right? So those are things that you're looking for. And keep in mind, people are nervous in the interview, so it may take some time to warm them up to get their true character to come out. And a lot of the questions I ask in the very beginning of the interview is to make them feel more comfortable. And I ask a lot of personal questions about, like what their hobbies are, what they do for fun, things like that to put them at ease. When people talk about things that they enjoy, they tend to relax a little bit. And then their character and their personality comes out, and then you get to learn who they really are.
I like it.
Yeah. Another thing I think is an absolute must in every interview is to role play them, right? If you want to know if they could do the job, have them pretend to do the job, right?
Oh my God.
So nothing. Yeah.
This reminds me of that movie Wolf of Wall Street. It was like, sell me this pen.
Yes. Yeah. And, before I was in the car industry, I was selling advertising, and same thing. They basically said, sell me this ad. Why should I, but it's true. Here's the thing. I let them know up front that, hey, I know you don't know a lot about the dealership. I know you may not know a lot about our product, so I'm not looking for product knowledge. Okay? I literally tell them, I just want to see how well you wing it, how well you go with the flow. Make up whatever you want, and that's going to be fine. So I kind of preface with that, so they could feel a little more comfortable doing it. And then I ask them some questions as a customer would ask a BDC rep. Right? Why should I buy this brand? Why should I buy a Honda? Why should I come to your store as opposed to another store? And I'll ask a couple questions like that just to see, how quick they are on their feet, right? So that's always, for me, a big factor in whether I think they could do the job. All right. Utilize hiring tools. So a lot of if you work for a big auto group, it may be required that you do this, but even if you're at a mom and pop shop, it's not that expensive to use tests such as like the Wonderlic, which determines their problem solving, how well they are at that. It's, I don't want to call it an intelligence test, but it's along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Will they be able to figure the job out? And behavioral tests, personality assessments, basically, they found characteristics that tend to do well in these type of positions, and are you a good match for this position? So it's not, I don't solely base my decision on that, but if someone, does terrible in those tests, then that's probably an indicator that may not be the best person for that position, right? So
Is there one that you recommend for behavioral tests? Like, do you do the DISC test? Or?
So there's a few that I've used in the past. Currently, we use one that's called SHL. There's also Omnia. There's another company that does it, and we've also used ProScan in the past. So there's a number of different ones that offer their services for businesses to use, and there's others out there. I mean, there's probably half a dozen different ones you could use. Frankly, to me, of the three, the ones that I've used, I don't have a preference one or the other. I think they all do a good enough job. And again, you're not basing your sole decision on hiring on this test, but you know what? It weighs into that decision. So very easy to sign up for one of those. And, obviously you want to attract people. And where are people today? Well, a lot of people on social media, right? Facebook, one of the most visited sites in the world. So you could post jobs not only on the traditional job listing sites. For instance, we use Indeed, and in the past we've used, Monster and career jobs and so forth. But, you could post jobs on social media. You could put it into your posting. Frankly, your website gets a lot of traffic, your dealership website. You should obviously have your job postings listed on there as well. All right. And here's another tip. There's a site, if you're not familiar, it's called Glassdoor. And essentially, people can anonymously review companies. It's not just automotive, this is for all companies, but it's a good idea. If you haven't checked it out, go and check out your Glassdoor ratings, and you're going to see reviews, like on any review site, talking about people's experience working at your place. And obviously, the better that looks, the more likely someone's going to want to come and work for you. So, and you could, optimize that page a little bit and talk a little bit about your company. So if you haven't already done that, I recommend doing so.
I mean, I've never worked for a company that I haven't checked out on Glassdoor. You know what I mean? I mean, not only do the customers read your reviews, but the potential employees do too. So paying attention to those reviews on those sites like that and on social media, great best practices for consumer reviews. And you want to, of course, respond quickly to the positive reviews and the negative ones. If you do happen to get a negative review on Glassdoor, don't get into an argument online, but take the conversation offline, just like you would any, consumer review. But that's definitely something, if you're not monitoring Glassdoor, that's definitely something you should absolutely be doing. And I don't know if a lot of dealerships are doing it right now.
You're absolutely right. And if you think about it, people spend how much time looking up reviews of a restaurant where they're going to go spend a couple hours at, right?
Yeah.
They could spend, my wife has spent like an hour, 2 hours sometimes looking up reviews on what restaurant to go to.
Really?
And we spent, only an hour and a half in that restaurant. So these people making a decision that they should spend years working for you, obviously that they're going to do some research on you. So that's certainly a good tip. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
you're doing great.
Now that you have,
by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So now that you have the right staff, all right, don't stop there. All right. And I think this is one of the areas that we as an industry, the automotive industry, really fall short is in training. And I mentioned that your staff is your number one asset. Think about how much money you spend on advertising, right? Whatever a typical dealership's budget is, but it's typically $50,000 a month in advertising for the store, depending on the size of your store. And then think about how much money you spend in your software and your CRM and your DMSs and how many, tens of thousands of dollars you spend on all your software, right? And then think about how much you spend on training your staff. And it's close to zero in most cases. So I think the best way to get results is to dedicate some time to training staff and developing them and growing them. And frankly, the better they are, whoever's their supervisor, their job gets easier. All right, so it's a win-win. Now, what do you train them on? I get asked this a lot. How do you train your staff? All right. There's a number of things I do. First of all, I think it's important for, especially a salesperson always takes their OEM product training, right? Mm-hmm. Every OEM provides online training for that, to learn the products. But very rarely do I see a BDC department be asked to do this. And that's a huge mistake. And, yes, we don't necessarily need them to be an expert on the car, not so much as the salesperson would be. But if a customer asks them some simple questions and they don't know the answer, they lose credibility. It makes their job a lot harder. So I require all of my staff to be up to date on all the OEM product training, and it certainly helps them when they're pitch when they're talking to customers on the phone. Obviously, CRM training is important. Often we'll put them in the CRM and say, all right, here you go, give them a crash course, and that's it. Most CRMs do a lot more than we know about. So you may have some trainers come around, but there's a lot of, I found, like, just by playing around, I found a lot of reports and features and stuff. I'm still finding things that I didn't know my CRM did. So it's important a tool is only as good as it's used well, right? So it's important to teach them how to use it efficiently, what you expect from them. So that's the tool they're going to be using the most. That's
Well,
the
you
tool they should
hope
be
they're using
experts
it
at.
the most. I think it's a
True. Good
very
point. Yeah.
underutilized tool for a lot of dealerships, unfortunately. But, a lot of
Agreed.
CRM companies are also out there providing training if you ask. So I think that's one thing that more dealerships should be training their staff on is the use of the CRM. I agree with you.
Good point. Yeah, and frankly, a lot of vendors, not Digital Airstrike, of course, but a lot of vendors, will only do as much as you ask them to do. So it's important, like you've heard the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So you got to ask for it and demand some extra attention. Often that'll happen to you. So another thing that's really important is phone scripts. Now, when I talk about scripts, I don't necessarily mean I want my staff to sound like robots, right? But it's absolutely important that you do have a standard script, that they memorize and learn it, and then once they feel comfortable with it memorized, then I encourage them to put their own personal touches to it. All right, but they can't personalize it if they don't know it. So, new staff, we obviously we train this, and then periodically, if the whole staff will review, here's the script, this is what you do, and then we'll role play it. So you should have a script for internet leads, and I have multiple scripts depending on the source, right? So not all leads are treated the same, whether it's a new car lead, a used car lead, certain third parties, you might treat them differently, or like a buying program, like a Costco or something like that. So I have multiple scripts based on the lead source. Obviously, phone up. It's important to capture that customer's info and create that appointment. So everyone needs to be on the same boat with that. If you're handling lease maturity, there's a script for that. If you're doing any kind of show and follow up, there's certain questions that I want them to ask and how to overcome those rebuttals. And even voicemails, we forget about this. I very rarely see someone train the staff on like what type of voicemail to leave, and obviously that's very important because let's face it, you're reaching a voicemail more often than someone's answering live. So you want to know tips to get that customer to call you back. Some strong call to actions there to get that customer to call you back, and we'll actually touch that later on in one of my other slides. Okay. Overcoming objections to me is probably the most important skill a BDC staff can have, and I dedicate a whole couple slides to this, so I'll get into this more later, but a lot of my training focuses on the most common objections we hear and how to overcome them. To help me out, because there's so much stuff you have to train a new hire. It really could be overwhelming sometimes with the amount of programs we have and policies in place. All right, so I made myself a few years back a checklist, and I just keep adding to it over and over again. I'm going to show you an example on the next slide.
Okay.
And I basically list all the programs that they require logins. All right, because I was tired of a month after I hired someone, they would come to me and say, "Hey, I can't get into this program. You never give me a login." Things like that. It's just it's crazy. So that's something day one, I have a list of everything I need to get them logins to. I think it's important to tell them about the lead sources. We often throw them onto the CRM and say, go call leads. But, like I said before, not all leads are the same. You're going to handle them different. They're asking for different things, whether it be a trade-in lead, a credit app lead, someone trying to sell their car to us. You're going to handle that a little bit differently. So it's important to review with your staff where the leads are coming from. And in fact, make them go to that site and submit a test lead so they could see what the customer went through before they reached you, so you could be on the same page as them. And any other type of advertising that you're doing, make them familiar. If you're doing, traditional stuff like newspapers or mailing or whatever, make them familiar with it so that they could be on the same page when they do reach one of those customers. Listen, there's a lot of websites out there that blogs and dealer-focused websites that they could go and learn and techniques and ask questions of other people. They can improve themselves. I encourage them. I say, listen, I'm going to train you, but don't rely on me. Go out and whatever questions you have, make yourself a better person. It's going to help you in the long run. So I give them some websites where they could do that. And then obviously if there's any important policies, like for me, I have a meeting at a certain time every week. I listen on here so they know right up front, don't miss this meeting and things like that. So, and listen, I would say train early and train often. right? So you want to do a good job of onboarding them, and that's what this checklist helps me do. But you want to continue to review this, periodically. And my tips are, you could do it either a short period every day. I would say maybe 15 minutes, every day. You find a time that works for you. Or sometimes I don't have time to do it every day, so I'll have a dedicated 1 hour that's the same time and the same day every single week. So everyone knows to be there. Don't schedule other appointments for that time. And that's where we'll review stuff. And I'll actually share with you a link to an article I wrote later on about what to talk about during these trainings, or how I basically conduct my training. Again, like anything else in my job role, it's a process. I'm prepared. I have a set of things that I want to, go over, and some goals to obtain, and I'm prepared for each one of these meetings. So I'll share that with you later.
Oh, that's
like
great.
I promised.
Just so you know, one of our attendees, Sharpie, wrote in, training isn't something you did, it's something you do. I don't remember who said that, but it's totally true. Thank you, Sharpie.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your comment. I agree on training.
Yeah. Thank you. Excellent
point.
I think that's one of
stores. Like, is one store, I gotta teach them every day for 15 minutes, but this other store, we could do it weekly 1 hour. I mean, do you?
Yeah, listen, each store has its own unique, culture to it, and so that's up to you as an individual. I think training to me, is one of the most important roles of a manager, is making your staff better. And I think all too often in all of our manager positions, we are so consumed with working that one customer in front of us, or putting out fires and handling beefs, that we tend to ignore the training side. And if you spend more time preventing the fire, you'll spend a lot less time putting out the fires later on. And like I always said, once I figured that out years ago, it just made my job so much easier. The more capable my staff were, and don't be afraid to delegate responsibility. I delegate them. I gave them a lot of access to things that I do. I let them run their own load kits and whatever. I gave them access to do stuff, and really it just made my job easier, and not just easier, but gave me time to focus on other things and keep developing as well personally, and so I could continue growing the business. So, sorry, I had a little off trainer, but
thank you.
This is an example.
Love your comments about it.
Yeah, this is an example. Obviously, you customize yours however you want. This started with maybe half this content, and then as I thought of things, I kept adding it to the sheet. But, I have this printed out, and I check things off as I teach it to my staff whenever I'm onboarding people. So it's just, like I said, websites that they should know, like the websites where I get my lead sources from. I talk about the different lead sources and how we should handle them. Links to other third-party sites. There's sites out there like Driving Sales or Dealer Refresh, CBT News, that they provide a lot of good training material. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, things to remind you about what software to do, even simple things like resetting the voicemail. If they're replacing someone's phone, taking over someone's phone. It would shock me how often people forget to reset the voicemail. I'd call, they'd get a voicemail 3 months after they started working, and it'd be the old employee there. So just things like that I would list on here. That's a bad look. And so it's just a reminder of things that have to happen so that they could be successful in their job. All right. So I talked about CRM being, in my opinion, one of the most important tools. And surprises me is how often people don't review those processes. All right. However your CRM calls it, it could be, some call it tasks, some call it work plan flow, whatever the terminology is. Essentially, when your CRM was installed in your store, they came in, they set up all these processes, when to call the customer, what templates to queue up. And it shocks me how often those same initial processes from years ago have not been reviewed since. And it's really important to look at that. And a lot of times I've consulted with dealers and I asked for access to the CRM, and I found emails that had typos in it. I found links. They've changed website providers over the years, and the links were to the old website, and you'd click on it, it wouldn't work. Things like that that you don't normally would think about, right? So I think it's important you set up a schedule, but every 3 months maybe, or every 6 months, you go and review it and make sure everything looks right. Right. Another thing that I recommend doing is checking the spam score of your emails. So I don't have any particular one that I recommend particularly. I've used a few different ones, but if you just Google check my spam score, you'll see a list of dozen sites pop up. Some are for free, some of them are paid and give you a little bit more insight on how to fix it. That's up to you, but even just do a free check. We find that at one point, only half of my emails were being delivered, and I had too many links, too many pictures, and I think a lot of dealers do that. We want to put tons of pictures and links, and that's okay if you do it properly. If it's marked up properly in the HTML, that'll work. But if you're doing it yourself in the CRM, sometimes it's a big flag. Right? So definitely check your spam score, make sure the emails get through. And also, read the templates. I do a lot of mystery shopping, and it shocks me sometimes. I get these emails, and it sounds like a robot wrote it to me. It does not sound human at all. And yeah, at one point it might have sounded like a good idea, but I think you should read it. And my point of view is, would you talk to somebody in person like that? Read it out loud, right? Read that email out loud to someone, and does that sound like a normal thing you would say to that person? And if the answer is no, rewrite it. All right, don't be afraid. I found that short and sweet works best. The longer the template, the less likely someone's going to read it. I found 1 to 2 sentences have been my most effective emails. So again, you want to talk like a person, say it out loud, see if it sounds right, and that's the way I would go about it. Another subject is subject lines. Right? What are you saying to get someone to even open it? Right? That's the first hurdle when you send somebody an email is, are they going to even open it? So you should play around with different subject lines. And again, there's if you Google it, there's a number of resources out there that give you tips on what to write. But I like short and sweet things like, hey, I have a question. Something just like that. It doesn't necessarily say, hey, I'm trying to sell you a car, right? So I will try to personalize it like I know the person, right? And they're more likely to open it if they think it's someone, talking to them one-on-one rather than being, a template. So I'll say, hey, I got a question about your BMW or something like that, and they're more likely to open it. Sometimes I'll say something like, hey, regarding your BMW purchase. Right? And if they haven't purchased the car yet, then I go, oh, I didn't buy a car yet. Did someone pick my identity? And they'll open that email right away. You don't want to go over the line and trick them. You know what I'm saying? Because then they're just going to resent you. So you walk a fine line. But if you understand what I'm saying, you want to get something that catches their eye. And the first step is getting them to open it. All right. And I keep saying that not all leads are the same, right? And I think we tend to just group internet leads into one bucket, and you shouldn't. All right, you should have different file process, different types of leads. For example, if someone's on your website and they submit an inventory lead, all right, well then you have a conversation about what car they're interested in. But what if they clicked on a trade-in lead? You're not going to send them an email saying, hey, when do you want to come in for a test drive? Because that's not what they asked about, and that might turn them off. Right, so you want to have a different process, different emails saying, something along the lines like, hey, we're really interested in making an offer on your car. When can we see it? So, changing your verbiage a bit. Same thing with credit apps, right? If someone put in a credit app, well, they want to know that you get approved, right? Or they're looking for the best rate. So you want to change your verbiage accordingly. And even with third-party leads, all right? If you're using third-party leads like TrueCar or Kelley Blue Book or so forth that are have brand recognition and people know what they are, why not co-brand? Why not take their logos, stick it next to your logo in your emails so that when they receive your email, it's not just so-and-so dealership. It's, oh, this guy's calling me because I went to TrueCar, because I went to Edmunds. All right, and so we've had a lot of success co-branding together using their reputation essentially to help me earn that customer's business. Mm-hmm. And frankly, if you're not mystery shopping yourself, you should be doing so, because you'd be shocked. I mystery shop myself once every 6 months, and sometimes I'm like, really? I wrote that. Even the email that I wrote, when I read it as a customer on my phone, I'm like, really? That doesn't look right. That's another thing that I should mention. Most people are checking their emails on their phone, not on a computer nowadays. So mobile, is definitely more popular than desktop. So when you create an email, don't just check to see how it looks on your desktop. Pull out your phone, email to you, pull out your phone, see how it looks, see if it's responsive, and how it's formatted, and make sure it looks properly on your phone.
Yeah, and not for
All right.
nothing, Digital Airstrike absolutely agrees with that. And if you go to digitalairstrike.com, you can actually sign up and we will mystery shop your dealership for you. And it's free, no obligation. So if you want to check that out, go to digitalairstrike.com and get yourself a mystery shop for yourself. All right, let's keep
That's a
going.
lot of value. Yeah, that's great. If you can have someone, if an outside to look at it for free, that's a no-brainer. And it looks like we have another poll question.
Hey now, second poll question on the way. All right, audience, you did so good on the first one. We're giving you another shot at it. What is your current average lead response time? Please select one of the following. Now, we have a lot of people on this call, so I'm looking forward to some great response on this one. Please select one of the following. Is it under 15 minutes? Oh, I hope so. Is it under 30 minutes? Is it under an hour? Still above average, by the way, if you're under an hour. Is it under 4 hours? Or, you know what? We just try to get to them in under 24 hours, in a day. You know, once we get a majority of the votes in, we're going to close this poll and share the results. And audience, thank you so much for writing in and giving me your answers. But if at all possible, if you could actually click on that radio button so that your poll answers are actually registered in software, that would be awesome. Once we get a majority of the votes in, we're going to close this poll and share the results. And oh, the votes are coming in fast. Yeah, we are going to be covering average lead response time. And while these votes are coming in, not for nothing, but Jason, there has been quite an OEM push on, getting to those leads as quickly as possible and responding as quickly as possible. And is that something that you have training on as well? Have you seen that from your OEMs that you deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is obviously not a new subject,
Yeah.
although it's an important one. But yes, for years now, most OEMs and a lot of these type of thought presenters have been talking about this. So obviously it's important. But I'm curious to see what is really happening, and hopefully these guys are answering honestly, because we don't know who's answering what, so you're not going to get in trouble.
Right. Yeah, it's totally anonymous. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Audience, thank you so much for your votes. We really appreciate it. Let's close this poll. And Jason, audience, here are the results. The majority, a solid 50% of today's audience, say they do it under 15 minutes. Awesome. 33%
Excellent.
of today's audience say it takes them under 30 minutes to get back to most of their leads. And 17% of today's audience say, you know what, we definitely do it under an hour. That's our average. But no one answered under 4 hours or under 24 hours. So that's great news. But I know you have some things that might help us get back to those leads even quicker, don't you, Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move it along. So, talking about response time, obviously speed is king, and there's no surprise there. The faster you contact someone, the more likely you are to get in touch with them and create that appointment. And I couldn't find the chart, but I remember seeing a chart not too long ago where they showed a bar chart where the first person to get in touch had like an 80% chance of making an appointment, and then the second person was like 50, and then it was like 30, and then 15 and 10, and it literally dropped dramatically in that order. So being the first person really gives you the best chance of making that appointment. Mm-hmm. Right? Absolutely believe that you should have response time less than 15 minutes. Really, it should be as quick as possible. I've had some people saying it should be, essentially real time or less than 5 minutes. And if you could do that, that's great. Realistically, it's not always possible if it's a very high volume store and so forth, and the right staffing in place. But absolutely, it's important that you share this goal with the staff. We talk about it as managers, but how do you stress the importance of it to your staff? All right, so I think it's important to show them what their response time is and pull up any examples of your CRM to be able to pinpoint which ones have taken longer than 15 minutes and dive in a little bit and find out why that happened and how can you avoid this going forward. You don't want to be negative and beat them up on it, but just to find out, okay, well, I see you took 30 minutes from this lead. Do you remember why? Do you remember what happened? What can we do to speed this up? All right, so that's a conversation I'll have with staff if necessary. Right. According to a digital airstrike study, I believe it was about a year ago, 2 years ago, that you guys did this study when you mystery shopped about 1,500 stores. We found that internet shoppers who received the response within 10 minutes were 3 times more likely to visit that dealership. All right, so I don't know about you, but I want my customers to be 3 times more likely to come visit me, right? So obviously, the quicker the better. All right, and often, once they speak with the first person to reach them, they'll make an appointment, and then they'll stop answering calls. Because let's face it, these shoppers are typically putting a lead in if they realize it or not to multiple 3 or more dealers, and then they start getting bombarded. And that's if they're just one brand. That's if they're shopping a Honda. But say they're undecided between a Honda, a Toyota, and a Nissan. They put a lead in on all 3. Now they're getting 9 dealers calling them. Right? So think about that, so they usually stop after the first or second time they answer the call and they realize they're going to keep coming. They actually tend to stop answering the phone call and they realize I'm about to get bombarded. So another reason why you want to be at first. And this was a fascinating study. It was a company, If by Phone, and I couldn't find their website. And then I read an article how they changed their name to Dialogue Tech, and that company is still there. But they did a study, and they reviewed thousands of lead responses, and they call this the 5-minute rule. And they determined that the odds of contacting a lead, a fresh lead, increases 21 times if you were to contact them within 5 minutes versus calling them or contacting them in 30 minutes. Right? 21 times more likely to get in touch with them, right, by calling them that quickly. So that's a fascinating stat to me, and it just proves the point that you want to be the first, right? So here's the most important tip I could give you for this is set up some kind of text alert or CRM. Yes, the CRM will give you some sort of alert, but what if you ran to get a coffee or you're in the restroom or whatever? You're at the desk talking to a manager, right? You don't get back to your CRM 15, 20 minutes later sometimes, and that lead now is 15 or 20 minutes sitting there, right? So every BDC rep has a cell phone, all right? I would obtain their permission to text before you start doing it. Obviously, stress the importance of why we need to do this so that you make more money, reach more people quicker, and make more appointments. So this is the benefit for them is they're going to make a lot more money. And even if they don't want the text, most CRMs have an app that will also create a notification that pops up like a text on their phone, all right? So set that up if you haven't set that up right now. That's really important. They could be doing anything else. They'll get an alert on their phone saying, oh, new lead came in, run back to their desk and try to reach them as soon as possible. All right, so that's a best practice. Talking about response time, I think we should also talk about the quality, right? So it's not always, it's yes, being quick is important, but also the quality of the response is equally as important, I believe. Specifically, check that lead, and do they have any notes? Do they have any comments in that lead? And we found that 25 to 33% of our leads have some sort of comment or question in the lead itself, right? And when we don't make a deal, I always do a follow-up to say, hey, how come we didn't earn your business? And one of the most common things I hear is, you didn't answer my question. Yeah, you kept calling me and you kept emailing me and so forth, but like I asked if you had this color in stock and no one told me, so I went somewhere else that answered that question. All right, and so that was a real eye-opener for me, and obviously that's one of the things that I'm constantly preaching in my trainings. All right, before you call, check it and obviously address any comments or questions in that lead. Okay. This is another question I get asked all the time. Do you quote your leads price quotes? And the answer is yes. And, specifically if they requested an inventory lead. If it's a trade-in lead, I'm not. If it's a credit app lead, I'm not, right? I'm going to give them the answer to what they're asking. But if it's an inventory lead on a specific car, then yeah, that's what they're asking you. And frankly, most of the time you got that lead is because they were tricked into believing they were going to get a price quote in order to submit that lead. And if you think about it, when you go onto these third-party sites, whether it be TrueCar, Edmunds, or Cars.com, right, the form says, click here to get a price quote, right? So they fill out this form, and then if they don't get that price quote, they feel cheated. So I think it's really important to do so. I think, you don't necessarily have to be the cheapest in the world, right? You don't have to be the cheapest. It has to be a fair price. It's got to be aggressive. If you're, $1,000 higher than everyone else, then sure, you belong to about the water. But if you're $200 or $300 higher than someone else, but you provide better value, that's fine. They're going to buy from you. Maybe you're closer to them or whatever reason. You have the color they want. But it's absolutely, in my opinion, important to send that price code. Okay. Not only a price code, but I like to provide more information that they find useful, such as payment estimates, right? Most people aren't paying cash. I mean, if they could, great for them. But, we see, 10, 20% of our customers are paying cash, and the other, 80, 90% are financing or leasing, right? So I like to provide this, and frankly, it makes your BDC job so much easier making that appointment, because when they call them, one of the top questions they get is, how much is it? Right, that's and then they stumble over like how to answer that question, and that's a roadblock to prevent them from making that appointment. But if that price code's sent to them, built in some value along with that price code, then they can say, oh, we're already selling you an aggressive price. Did you know that we're a great dealership because of this reason, and blah blah blah, and then go for the appointment. Right. So having the payments there also makes it easier to do that. And I'm obviously a strong believer in providing alternatives. All right, I've seen many studies where 60% of the time, a customer that comes in off an internet lead ends up purchasing something different than what they originally asked about. 60% of the time. And now it could be as simple as like a different color, different trim level, it could be a different model, it could be a new rather than used, or vice versa. So there's a number of reasons why they pick something different, right? But when they get to the store and they see it in person, a lot of times they will change their mind. So Digital Airstrike provides a fantastic tool, a product called Response Logics that I've personally been using for about 8 years now.
8 years? My goodness.
8 years. I've been in multiple stores, in multiple locations that I've worked. I've always used this tool, and look at it. I mean, when I mystery shop dealers and I get a handwritten email back, and then I compare it to this, where I could put my value on you could create any kind of custom logo on top or banner talking about your value of dealing with you, and then pictures of the car, payments, where they could actually using deal track to pull in the rates and residuals so it's accurate. They could open up that payment calculator and play around with the terms themselves. And obviously you can determine as well if you want to, how much money down, so forth, right? And I also think you should have nice pictures of the staff in there, and as you can see, alternatives. I always put 3 new alternatives and 4 pre-owned alternatives, right? So there's no reason for them to go anywhere else. I'm answering all their questions, and if this is too expensive for you, here's a few others that are a little bit cheaper that might catch your eye, right? So when they see that compared to a lot of my competition's emails, that really adds a lot of value doing business with us, and it's a really professional way of presenting it.
I mean, not for nothing, but I'm the ultimate shopper. And if you told me you had a car that only had a few thousand miles more that was pre-owned and it would save me $10,000, I would absolutely look at that car. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
as a matter of fact, I did.
Yeah, and you can determine which vehicles are shown as alternatives. So let's say you have you're on a 19s, but you still have some 18 leftovers. You could say every time someone wants a 19 CRV quote, throw this 18 in with it. So really, you can choose whatever alternatives you want to show up. Mm-hmm. You could do that, and on the pre-owned side, it actually automates. It pulls the 4 closest similar vehicles for you, so you don't have to worry about building out this email. It's all automated. That's the beauty and the joy of it. Is it's all automated. It gets sent out really in 5 minutes. They tell me within 15 minutes, but I find on average most of these emails get sent out within 5 minutes, and it looks like it's sent by the rep. It's from their email address. It's not from some generic email address. It's from the rep's email address. So if they hit reply, it goes right back to that rep. And it's a really nice professional way of presenting, your dealership to the customer.
Oh my gosh, automating. Whenever you get an opportunity to automate, oh, how much time and energy and brain cells it saves somebody is, gosh, I wish there was more things we could automate.
Yeah,
awesome.
I said the CRM to me was most important, and the second most important would be my AI products. And I use several, Response Logic being one of them. Digital Airstrike obviously has some other stuff, And to me, the huge value is it saves my staff time. So instead of sitting there typing up emails, which is time consuming, I want them pounding the phone, which is the most effective way of making that appointment, right? And sending the text messages, which we'll talk about. So by having this automation, it frees up their time to do, to me, what is the most important actions they could be doing, which is phone calls and texts.
I mean,
Right,
and
so,
even still, what if they're like
yeah.
actually sitting with somebody in the middle of a sale, and they're closing somebody out and they get a lead at that same time? This takes care of it for them. Okay, yeah, right. Let's go to step number 5.
Yeah, let's keep it moving. I got a lot more to cover still, but talking about follow-up, this is another example of a product that I use through Digital Airstrike, which is their smart follow-up program. And what this does, it gives me 180 days of email, short and simple. I like it short and sweet. That's how I like to handle all of my messaging to customers. They're more likely to respond if it's short, and it's interactive. And so this is another great tool. But one of the most popular questions I also get asked is, how long do you follow up, and how often, what's your follow-up process? And I would say phone calls, depending on the type of lead, I will have set up 45 to 90 days of phone calls. If it's a new car, they typically tend to have a longer cycle, and I'll do 90 days. If it's a used car, typically, hopefully you're turning your cars pretty quickly, and I might do a little less follow because people tend to be out of the market a little bit sooner with that. But that's up to you. But I would say anywhere between 45 and 90 days is appropriate. Phone calls, longer than that, frankly, it's not worth the investment you're putting in, because the response time back after 90 days, if they didn't get back to you in 90 days, they're probably never going to answer that phone call ever. So that's why I cut it off there. Emails, I say 180 days specific to that lead inquiry, but you could put that email into, if you have a monthly newsletter or a database where you send out monthly, email blasts, then that could be in there, forever, infinitely. But specific to this inquiry, this purchase inquiry, I would say 180 days. But really the most important to me is that first week. They found that, a third of the customers, almost 40% of the customers are buying that car that first week. And you don't know when that lead comes into you, you don't know where they are in their buying process, or what they call a buying funnel, right? So usually it's the top of the funnel. They're trying to decide what type of vehicles I want, an SUV, a sedan, so forth. Then they're trying to figure out what brand, what OEM should we go with. And then they'll narrow that down to the model, and then they'll try to figure out which dealer, right? So it's a process they're going through when they're buying a car for most customers. And you don't know if you got that lead at the top of that funnel, where it might be 2 months before they're ready, or at the bottom of the funnel when they know exactly what they want, and they're just trying to figure out what dealer has the car and where they're going to buy it. So you want to, I assume that everyone's ready to buy it today. That's the way I treat every one of my leads. I call them assuming that today's the day they're buying their car. And obviously, you want to hit them harder, hit them, often in that first week. And when I say 5 more calls, that's a call every day, basically, that you're working for the first 5 days. But it doesn't have to be only 5. And what I mean is, you can call someone 2 or 3 times in that first day or two, just to try to make sure that you're the first person that they speak with. So listen, a lot of BDC reps are hesitant to call too often because they don't want to come off as too aggressive and annoy the customer. But to me, I found the benefits of doing that outweighs the con of, yeah, I might piss off a few customers, but I'm going to make this many more deals that made it worth it to me. That's the way I look at the end result, right? That's what matters. The end result is how many cars you sell. So if I piss off 5 customers this week, but I made 10 extra deals, well, then that's a net 5 more deals I made, and that's obviously worth it to me. So those are the
It's
things
all
you want
about the numbers, Jason. I get you.
I'm very analytical. Yeah, very analytical. So, and I tell my guys that to me, it's a compliment. If I get a complaint that you've called them too much, I've made it known that I'm taking you to lunch that day. So it's almost like a fun challenge to them, right? I said, if I get a phone call or an email complaining about you did too much follow-up, lunch is on me, your next meal. And I'm serious, and I'm dead serious about that.
What are they going to complain about? Oh, he was too attentive. I mean, give it a shot.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't get a lot of them. But I might get a couple a month when maybe when I send a follow-up email saying, hey, how was your experience? They might say, oh, you guys are annoying. You called me every single day for 2 weeks, and I'm like, I don't tell the customer this, but back in my mind, I'm like, fantastic. This guy deserves a raise. Like, that's what I want him to do. So that's why I tell them, like, don't ever be afraid of being too aggressive. And I'd gladly have a couple upset people, but, again, the benefit is you're going to make a lot more deals. So, here's another tip is call different times. So, you may not know if you have someone's home number or their work number. And if the CRMs will often generate a phone call task for you the same time every day. Usually it's like 9 in the morning or something along those lines. And if you keep calling this person at 9 in the morning and they don't ever answer, well, you're probably calling their home and they're at work. So you need to switch it up. And that means if you have to manually create some extra phone calls for you at different times, then do it. Take the initiative. Call them in the evening. Call them, different times. Call them on the weekend, and that has helped us, get through to people. And again, I talked about voicemail messages. That's important because you're going to reach a voicemail more than you reach someone live, and you want them to call you back, right? And so, how good you are at this task will really increase your productivity. As if everything I've been saying is you want to keep it short and sweet. I think a customer's attention span is no more than 30 seconds. I know mine isn't. If someone leaves me a message at more than 30 seconds, I'm deleting it, after that 30-second walk approximately. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. You want to have a strong call to action, all right? Something like, hey, I have great news for you, and this is nothing new. I've heard this for years, but this technique. But I have great news for you regarding the Toyota Corolla. Please call me back as soon as possible, right? That's a strong call to action, right? Not, hey, let me know if you're in the market. A lot of times I hear BDC reps say something like that, and that's not really of value to the customer. Why should he call you back just to tell you if he's in the market or not? No, we want to sell that guy a car, and in order to do that, we need him to get on the phone and call me back. So give him a reason to do that. Right. This technique, the promise to call back technique, let me give credit to Steve Stoning, who's an excellent trainer in the car business, and he provides this free on his website, and that's why I feel comfortable sharing it, because I did learn from him, and I want to give him credit for that. So he has a technique that I learned that when you leave a voicemail, to tell them in the voicemail, hey, if I don't hear back from you tomorrow, I will give you a call around this time. Right? Mm-hmm. Say something along those lines. And when you call again tomorrow, if they don't answer again, you say, hey, sorry I missed you. If I don't hear from you again, I'm going to call you on this day and this time. And obviously make sure you follow that promise. And if you do that once or two times, they realize, like, you're not going to give up. You've made that promise. You're keeping it.
You're
and
serious
you'll be
about
shocked.
this.
Yes. And yeah, it's a little aggressive, but it's professional, obviously. And they're going to either call you back and be like, all right, I get it. Like, or they're going to answer that next call, realizing that you're not going to leave them alone. So I found some success with that. I thought it was a pretty cool technique. Right? And again, the theme has been, don't be afraid to use AI and automation. And just like this follow-up process right here that's automated, when someone clicks, yes, I'm still interested, or, I'm looking at other vehicles, or notify the rep, hey, go talk to this person. This is what they clicked. So it basically gets us involved when it's time to get involved.
Right.
So we're not sitting and typing this email out every few days and wasting time like that.
Yeah, so. And real quick, if you could go back to that slide, because I actually have a question about that slide. Also, that AI, you can actually use it also on the leads that come in from Facebook if you're doing Facebook Marketplace too. So AI, automation, whenever you can, saves your sales team from monitoring those leads and helps you respond and engage and all that stuff. But I did want to get to this one comment from Rick, one of our attendees. He says, where do the links in the follow-up template that are on the screen right here go to? For instance, I'm referring to, yes, I'm interested. Since they show up in blue and are underlined, it looks like they're a link. So let's say you send this template out to Donna, and she clicks, yes, I'm still interested. What happens? Where does that go?
So essentially, based on which one they clicked, it then queues up an email to the assigned BDC rep to let them know, hey, this person just clicked, I'm still interested, call them right away. Uh-huh. All right. And so basically that's all it does. And it lets us know which button they clicked, essentially, so we know what action to take. And so it basically, that's all it does. It pings us to say, jump on this. It's a hot lead, or I believe the term is a reactivated lead. It's what the terminology they use is. But essentially it's telling me like, hey, this person's hot. Hurry up and get on top of it. And from that point, we take over.
Okay, and then he's following up with a question. So if they want to schedule a test drive, does it take them to the website where they can schedule their test drive?
Yep, it brings up like a lead form they can fill out, and they select like a day and a time that they're interested in test driving, and then it pings that right to the BDC rep or internet sales rep to let them know so that they could follow up and confirm it as necessary.
I love this follow-up template. Okay, thank you so much for the questions, Rick. I know you still have a lot to go, and we're already over our 1 hour, my friend. So let's keep going.
So let me run through this a little faster. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize for sharing awesomeness.
All right. So texting, let me just, my disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, so be familiar with whatever the federal, any state, text advertising law is. Obviously, regarding opt-ins and opt-outs, speak to a lawyer. And frankly, the people that provide your texting solutions are well versed in this. So if you have any questions, talk to them. Okay. Text. Why is text important? Well, right there, it has a 98% open rate, right? And they did a study and they found that an average person checks their phone 150 times per day. I know that sounds crazy high, but think about it. Most people have their cell phone within arm's reach 24 hours a day, right? When you're sleeping, you have it on the table, the nightstand next to you, right? Most people, when they go to the bathroom, they shower and get ready, they bring it with them into the bathroom, right? It's in their pocket all day long. I mean, it's literally my phone's within my arm's reach 24 hours a day, all right? And so what better way to get in touch with someone than through this tool that's never out of their sight, right? In comparison.
So seriously, cell phones have literally changed the way we go to the bathroom.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. There's been studies about how much more time people spend in the bathroom because of them being on their phone. So I'm not going to get into that subject, but in comparison, email has an average of just a 22% open rate. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a 98% read rate than a 22%. Right? So I'm not saying email is not important. Yes, you need to do your diligence because certain people prefer phone versus text versus email, but obviously you want to text everyone. So here's some of my tips. I'm going to run through them real quick. I attempt to text 100% of my leads that have a textable phone number, obviously. Like everything else, I keep it short and sweet, a quick little one-liner. I'm not going to write a whole story. I believe you get about 160 characters in the text. You definitely don't want to go over that because then it looks really weird on the phone when it says like part 1 of 2, and then the second one pops up, part 2 of 2, and sometimes it's in the wrong order, and the part 2 pops up on top of part 1, and it's hard to read. So essentially keep it short. Right? Don't overdo it, meaning calls, to me, there's no way to ever overdo calling someone. Like, that's my opinion. But in texting, yeah, because that could be annoying. I would say I give it 2, maybe 3 attempts overall. If they don't respond to that, then they definitely don't want to talk to you. So I don't go crazy with the texting as far as that. Obviously, be professional. When we're talking with friends and we're doing LOLs and emoticons and abbreviations, remember not to do that with the customer. Right? Now, if the customer does that back to you, all right, then that's a thumbs up to repeat it back to them, right? If they're writing LOLs and stuff, then it's okay for you to reciprocate in kind. But, it should be someone that takes this serious and they don't appreciate that. So always start off professionally. And getting text messages is also a great way to get positive reviews from customers. That's obviously very important. I don't have enough time, although I could spend 30 minutes talking about just getting reviews. And an example, and I say keep it short and sweet. Hey, Jim, did you get my message? Or frankly, some of my reps had success just saying, hey, Jim. That's it. They write, hey, Jim, and nothing else. And it shocked me when they started doing that, how many people would write back, who is this? Do I know you? But you know what? that got the conversation started. As crazy as that sounds, once they wrote back, now they kind of felt obligated to keep speaking. And so that actually just got your foot in the door, so to say. And then they would say, oh, it's Cindy from Honda. Did you get my email about this or whatever? And now they have a two-way conversation. And now you're down the path of achieving an appointment. All right. So that's a great little tip. Nice little picture of someone texting. And a great way to get positive reviews from customers, as I mentioned. All right, and it's time for another poll question.
Our last poll question. All right, audience, let's get through this as quickly as we can because we still got 4 more hot tips from Jason Cohen to go over. So what do you feel is the hardest objection to overcome? Now, we did remember more than 20% of you today said, overcoming objections is still a big challenge for you at your dealership. So we want to know which is the objection that you feel is the hardest to overcome. Please select one of the following answers. Is it price? Is it value your trade in? Is it APR? Is it car availability? Very interesting. Or is it all of the above? Once we get a majority of those votes in, we're going to close this poll and share the results. And I see you, Dave. You're writing in your response to them. Just so you know, Dave says it's all of them. It would not surprise me for people to say all of them because I do feel each one of those objections, it takes the right amount of tact and information to get through it. So I absolutely understand the concerns on every single one of those. And, a lot of times dealerships are like, well, we're transparent on this and we're upfront on this, but this is the one we're kind of maybe a little bit sketchy about, So let's see what the audience had to say. Audience, thank you so much for your votes. Jason, are you ready to see this?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. Audience, thank you so much for your votes. Let's see what everyone else had to say. So what's the hardest objection to overcome? Well, the majority, 48%, so almost half of today's audience, said it is price. That doesn't actually surprise me. 33% of today's audience, full third of today's audience, said it's valuing the trade. Interesting. 5% of today's audience say it's availability. And a solid 14% said it is all of them. That, again, does not surprise me. Jason, are you surprised by any of this?
No, not at all. And like I said before, most of these customers are tricked into submitting that lead based on the fact that they were promised a price quote, right? So they don't really know what else to ask. I find that almost every customer asks about price. Mm-hmm. Not that other things aren't important to them, but they don't know what else to ask. And part of it, I feel, that is the car industry is done to ourselves because a few decades ago, we would tell people, oh, go shop around, get your best price, and come back and I'll beat it, right? Before they were putting internet leads in. That's essentially how people bought cars, right? They would visit 5 dealerships in person, and now it's all done online, but we kind of like brainwash them to do that. And then the second part of it is these third-party sites, even our sites, frankly, we do that in order to get that lead, to get the information so that we can call them. So that's why that's the first thing they ask. So let's talk about that. So obviously, I said this before, it's one of the most important skills because it's something that's going to come up on most phone calls, mm-hmm. right? And we definitely should give them the tools and practice of them what to say. Okay, I find in this order is price, trade, and APR. I also find availability of the car and also like location you're too far. So for me, that's my 5 most common objections. I actually have different word tracks written up, like scripts for each one of these objections. So I spend a lot of time teaching them different scripts, and I don't have time today to share all of them with you, though I will share a one I use as a catch-all for any objection, so that I will share with you. But figure out what your plan is and how you want to handle that, okay? And teach your staff what to say and practice it. Be a professional. You're going to get asked that on almost every call. Be prepared. You don't want to be stuttering and not know what to say, right? So that's one of the most important lessons.
You add this to your process. You don't leave it up to each of the individual salespeople. You're like, this is how we handle when this objection comes up.
Absolutely. And if it's something that you can answer, like they want to know what the trade is worth or what the rate's going to be if a 600 score, I mean, obviously you can't tell them that because that BDC rep is not an appraiser, is not a bank representative. Like they don't know the answer. We don't want them to know the answer. Right? So the trick is to not tell them that answer, but don't sound like you're avoiding the answer either. Right? I know it sounds crazy, but customers don't like to be told no. Right? No one does, right? No one likes to be told no. So you have to figure out a way to avoid the question without sounding like you're avoiding it. That's one of the most important skills, all right? And essentially, I'm going to give them a reason, a valid reason that makes sense to them. You know, I can't tell you what your trade was because only a trained appraiser can do that. Right? Or I can't tell you what your interest rate is because it's determined by the bank, not by the dealer, and only a bank rep could do that. All right? But then you want to don't just say no. You want to end it with a positive spin and say, but don't worry, my appraisers told me they're paying top dollar. They can't wait to buy cars. They're like struggling to buy cars, and they're paying extra for them right now. And I'm sure that you're going to get a great deal. We all don't worry. We work with don't worry. We work with a ton of banks, and we'll get you the lowest rate possible. Oh, you have a great credit? That's fantastic. Sounds like you're going to get the best rate possible. I'm excited to see what it is. When can you come in? And I teach them, get excited. Like instead of now being that person on the other end that's arguing with them, you're like on their side saying, I can't wait to see how much you get for your trade. I can't wait to see how low your interest rate is when you come in. And most people are scared about finding this out, and you're making it like exciting, so it's a little bit different than how most people would handle it. So that's without sharing all of my specifics, that's the gist of my word tracks, right? This is something I learned before I was in the car business, and it really applies to any sales industry, and it's called the feel, felt, found technique. And if you can remember those 3 words, you can remember this technique. That's why I like it. Right? It's easy to teach. It's easy to remember.
Are you going to
right?
teach
So
me?
let's jump right into that. Let's do this. So the first part, the feel part, is essentially you're empathizing with that customer and showing them you're on their side, right? I understand how you feel regarding getting a good value for your trade, right? Mm-hmm. Then the felt part is you want to show that, hey, you're not alone. Other people have felt that same way. So, hey, I understand how you feel regarding getting a good value for your trade. You know what? A lot of my other customers felt that same way when I first started working with them. And then that found part is you let them know that these other people that are just like you, they found out that not only did everything work out, but it was like a way better than expected. And I'm sure it's going to be the same for you, right? So,
dude, I am ready to buy. I love this feel, felt, found. That's the first time I've ever heard of it.
Yeah. I understand how you feel regarding getting a high amount for your trade. Well, listen, a lot of my other customers, they felt the same way when I first started working with them. But you know what they found out? When they came in and we made them an offer, not only did they get a great amount, they were happy with it, but they also had a great experience doing so, and I'm confident it's going to be the same for you. Right? So if you can remember feel, felt, found, because that word is in each one of those sentences, basically you can remember this whole script easily. And it works with any objection, price, APR, trade, whatever. Any objection that comes up for the most part, you can plug this in and use it. So it's just one of my techniques I use. I might try one specific to that objection, and if that doesn't work, sometimes you have to try different things. They might come at you 2 or 3 times asking what my trade's worth. So I teach them 2 or 3 different ways to overcome it. So moving on. Daily checkout sheet. Now, some CRMs actually have this built in as like a report that you can print out. Mine in particular doesn't, but that's okay. It's really simple to build one yourself. And basically what it is I want to monitor what actions lead to sales, right? I don't necessarily say to my guys, how many cars were sold today because of you. I want to know, how many calls did you make today? How many texts did you send? How many times did you pick up the phone and take a phone up and log it in, right? How many appointments did you create? How many appointments did you showed? And if they do all those things well, guess what? You're going to sell more cars, right? So not to micromanage, which it is a little bit, but if you let them know that these are the actions that are important, and this is what leads to high performance, that's going to get you higher performance, right? Here's an example. I use Google Drive. It's free. And you can create a sheet just like you would with Microsoft Office, basically, and share it with whoever you want and give them just view only or edit access, right? And this is an example. They are required to fill this out on a daily basis when they're here, obviously. And just like I said, these are the actions that will lead to deals, right? So the calls and texts and the phone ups lead to appointments. Appointments lead to show appointments, and those will ultimately lead to sales. right? So this tool is not just good for the manager, but I found it actually is great for the rep, so that if I tell them that your objective is to make 80 phone calls a day and you realize that one day you only made 50, well, hell, the next day you better make, 110 to bounce out that 80 a day that I require you to make. So it kind of keeps them on course throughout the day. I think as an industry, we tend to look at reports often monthly, and we'll review this with our staff monthly. And guess what? At the end of the month, it's too late to go back and do a better job. The month's over. Right? So this is kind of a way they can review themselves very quickly. It takes only a couple of minutes to do this each day, and they know if they're on track to do the right thing. Right? Tip number 9, listen to phone calls. If you don't have a call tracking software, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's 2019, and it's really important to your business. First of all, not just get that call tracking, all right, but make sure that tracking number is everywhere. And most call providers can give you a local number. If you want a local number to appear, you don't want an 800 number, that's fine. You can get a local number that's trackable. And make sure you put it not just on your digital stuff, like all your websites and your email blasts, but we forget about our phone numbers on them, business cards, on keychains we hand out, paperwork like repair orders and purchase orders, things like that. So it took me a while to track down all my phone numbers. I ended up changing it in like 2 dozen places when I first did this. And I occasionally, once in a while, still come across somewhere where I have my old non-tracking number, and it'll drive me nuts, right? This is a great tool. When I talk about training, all right, when I hire a new employee, when I onboard them, I will give them a login right away to this, and I'll say, hey, go listen to 10 calls from every other person in the department and hear what they're saying and what the customer's saying, and that really gives them a gist of what the job entails, so they're feeling confident, when they start the job. Right. I also like to play a couple of calls every week in my weekly meetings, play it out loud. Now, listen, most staff members, they don't like it because they feel embarrassed at first. But the trick is to not be negative on them. Don't sit there and beat them up and embarrass them. I look not just for negatives, for the positives. I say, hey, that was a great job. I like the way how you got that customer's phone number. I like the way, you made that appointment. And you kind of want to give them positive reinforcement, not just negative. And really, the point of it is not to get on you for something you did wrong in the past, because you can't change that, right? You want to prepare for the future. You want to change the future. And so you want to learn, right? You don't want to repeat history. You learn from history so you don't repeat it. So it's a great tool to do that. And if someone's not performing well, if I find someone's falling behind, I'll pull them aside privately and say, hey, let's pull up 4 or 5 of your calls right now and listen to it, and let's see what's going on. I can give you some tips to see something differently. And again, I already said this, but it's got to be positive, not just negative. And once you start doing that, then they won't be so embarrassed about listening to the calls in public. And like I said, give everybody access to listen to the calls. It shouldn't be like a secret that you hold guarded to yourself. All right, I recommend to my guys all the time, go home. Don't rely on me to teach you. Teach yourself. Listen to your own calls and say and point and realize what you did right and what you did wrong, and improve yourself. All right. And finally, number 10. Is measuring your KPIs, your key performance indicators. These are those metrics that I find to be most important when it comes to internet sales. And this is actually a rule that I learned, 10 years ago, maybe from Toyota, some Toyota training I went to, and they recommended the 4x60 rule. And essentially, you're measuring 4 things: your contact rate. And what that is, two-way communication with a customer, whether it be they answer the phone, they respond to a text, they respond to an email, right? But some kind of two-way interaction that you have a live conversation going on. And out of your internet leads, I expect my staff to have a two-way conversation with 60% of them. Now, some CRMs have the tools to measure this, some don't. So this one's a little hard for most people to measure, right? So I'll just skip over that because I don't really have any choice. But going along these metrics, out of those 60% that you contact, you should be able to create an appointment with 60% of that. So let's say you had 100 leads, you had a two-way contact with 60% or 60 of those people. You make an appointment of 60% of those 60 people, and that's 36 appointments, right? Now, out of those 36 appointments, you should be able to, 60% should be showing up in the store, and that would be 22, right? 22% show ratio, 6% of that 36. And out of those 22 people that show up, we should be able to close 60% of those. They're more likely, obviously twice as more likely to close than a walk-in, and that would result in a 13% internet lead closing ratio. Now, to be fair, industry average is closer to 10%. All right,
I
I've
was
seen
going to
it
say a
range from
13% closing ratio is rock star status.
yeah, it's really 8 to 10% depending on, where you are geographically and the brand and so forth. It's really like 8 to 10% in that range is what most people is the average, right? But I don't want to be average, and neither should you, right? So I strive, right? Strive for the moon, and if you miss, you land in the stars, right? You've heard that. So I'm gonna strive for 13, and if I miss and I get 10%, okay, like I'm okay with that. But I'm not gonna tell my guys I'm okay with that. I'm gonna say keep going for 13. You know what I'm saying? So, and obviously with phone ups, you're already making 100% contact. So that's why you jump over to the next stat where 6% appointments and shows and sold results in a 22% closing ratio on phone ups. So you should obviously have a higher closing ratio on phone ups. So those are my two key performance indicators. And I'm going to just one more slide before I show you how I track it. All right. And again, we sometimes forget to share with our staff what's important. All right. We know what's important to us, but do they know? Right. So you want to make sure that you review with them. These are the goals. These are the metrics that we're measuring, and these are some tips on how you should get there. Right. So I give them clear expectations. That's very important. I think that someone's not only their performance but their job satisfaction, knowing what's expected of them. It's very frustrating if you don't know what's expected of you. I review these results monthly, and then I archive it and make it available. You could use either Microsoft OneDrive if your company uses that. There is a free version of it, and also Google Drive as well, which is free. So I archive it on there, and they can go back and they can look and see how I did last month compared to this month, how I did last year compared to this year. So I make that data available for all of them. No reason to keep it a secret. And by measuring this, you get to pinpoint what their strengths and weaknesses are. Are they good at making appointments but they're not showing up? Are the appointments showing up but they're not being sold? And you can figure out what you need to work for them on an individual basis. Now, this is an actual, if anyone listening to the call has been to one of my dealerships, you walk into my BDC room and this is a giant board that I have on there. I think it's 5 feet. I think it's like a 5 or 6 foot by 4 foot board. It's shrunken down here, but and yeah, it's a lot of work because I'm manually updating it and I'm looking at more stats than most people do. If you're wondering why there's something called a PHP on there, that's what we call our parameters on the purchase leads. Those are people that just sell us the car that looking at yeah, so I have an extra 4 columns in there that most dealerships probably won't have. But I buy a lot of Kelly Blue Book and True Car Trade leads where someone just wants to sell me their car, and I want to obviously track that separately than my regular internet leads. So I break it out that way. But this gives everyone the ability to see it, and anyone that walks in that room could see this, and it kind of makes it a little bit competitive. And then I transport those numbers onto a spreadsheet. And I have some conditional formatting set up where it highlights if they achieve my benchmark, which is on the right-hand side, or not, and essentially it lets me know, okay, this person's good at this, but needs work on that. And so it helps you, like I said, pinpoint who needs help with what, and you can really tailor, individualize your training for that person. So it's obviously it's a ton of information, and we review it, and then not just talking about the numbers, but like how do we improve it, right? So it's important to do both. This is what we expect. This is where you felt, where it came out, and here's what I think you should do to get better at it. So that's basically what I do.
I'm sorry. Do you do one-on-one for each of these people to try and improve them, or do you say, hey, you know what? I see that a lot of people on the team are having trouble with such and such, so let's do a training on that.
Yeah, so I do it in my group trainings for everybody, and just best practices, and frankly I want them to see what the other people did, and it makes it a little bit competitive and makes them strive to do better because they want to outdo listen, they get along well. I'm not saying it should be aggressive to each other. I'm saying friendly competition, it never hurts, right?
Right.
So I do that, but then yes, individually, if I see someone is struggling in a certain area, they're not making enough calls, they're not making enough appointments, I'll pull them aside and say, hey, this is what your stats were. What do you think? Why do you think it was that way? And I'll get their opinion, and then I'll say, okay, well, what do you think you do better? And based on what they say, I'll agree with them, or I'll tell them what I think they should do better. So it's not just me preaching to them; it's a two-way conversation. All right.
Fascinating.
So,
Fascinating.
Yeah. Now let's jump. That was my 10 tips. Hopefully,
you did good.
Hopefully, I know I went a bit over, but hopefully you got some real value from that. here are some suggested resources. So like I mentioned a few times, Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive to share your reports and that daily checkout staff. You should definitely be familiar with that. I have a nice article written about me in the Car Roads magazine, as mentioned prior to us starting, and a lot of these tips that I just presented were talked about in that article as well, so there's a link to that. And I also mentioned a lot about my training, my weekly training sessions. I have wrote an article that was published in Auto Success magazine talking about how to conduct a successful meeting and how I do it. So those are links, write them down, and you can visit those links and I'll pull up those articles. All right, give everybody a second to write that down.
Those are pretty easy links. I like it.
Yeah, I shrunk them down for you to make it easy. And action items. I started off by saying it's all about people and process. And everything I talked about today was having the right people, developing those people, holding them accountable, and then having processes for response time, for follow-up, for everything, and, keeping people to adhere to it. So obviously, to me, nothing's more important than having the right staff. So, you got to make time for acquisition, for, recruiting people, for interviewing properly and training a lot, right? Review your CRM processes, especially if it's been over a year since you last reviewed it, and mystery shop yourself. That's a good way to see how they look. Mm-hmm. And review your lead response time and tactics, right? Definitely listen to some calls, right? Whether it be with your staff or even just by yourself, get on the phone. That's the best way to hear what's going on and how well they're performing at their job. And make sure you monitor those crucial activities and measure and share those expectations and those results with your staff. All right. Time for questions.
Oh, Jason, you have to take a well-earned sip of water. You have put out so much great information. I know my audience is agreeing with it because almost all of them have still stayed. They're still on. So thank you, audience. You've been very patient. We're going to give away a prize real soon. Sometimes we have a presenter that comes on, like Jason today, who puts out so much great information. It actually hurts. So one of our attendees, Sharpie, he wrote in, I'm getting writer's cramp. I took 5 pages plus of notes. I feel you, David. I don't think you're the only one, my friend. So thank you so much, Sharpie, for the comment. Don't worry, we have some more awesomeness coming at you because you know what? We have some amazing questions that have just come in from the audience. So Jason, whenever you're ready, put on your webcam. There he is. There's my man.
Had to take 2 gulps of water while talking.
You have earned it. My goodness, so much great information, great questions from the audience. We're going to get to those in just a second. But audience, if you were here at the top of the hour, then you heard me announce that Digital Airstrike, yes, we're giving away an amazing prize today on the webinar. I hope you took great notes because the first person to write in the correct response to our giveaway question is going to be winning 1 month free of ResponsePath. What's ResponsePath? Let me tell you, it's the leading intelligent messaging platform in the automotive industry. You can show your inventory, capture leads 24/7, and jump into any conversation on the fly. Its beautifully intuitive software is built to grow your dealership, and this prize is valued at just under $800. Great prize for you and your dealership. All you got to do is be the first person to correctly answer our giveaway question. All right, everyone, so get to your keyboards. Get ready. Like I said, first person to answer the giveaway question correctly is going to win this amazing prize. If you are a vendor, we love having vendors on our show. Don't ever question that. But this prize is intended for dealership personnel only. So please, if you wouldn't mind, sit it out. If you wouldn't mind. Jason, if you wouldn't mind, please go to the next slide for us. All right, now listen. No, not that slide.
The prize alert?
There you go, the prize alert slide. There you go, Jason. All right, thank you so much. All right, audience, here is your giveaway question. Vendors, please kindly sit this out. Good luck, everyone. We hope you took great notes. Earlier in the presentation, Jason was talking about lead response time and specifically about the 5-minute rule. According to the 5-minute rule, how many times more likely would you be able to contact a lead if you attempted to reach them within 5 minutes versus 30 minutes? Oh my goodness. First person to answer correctly is the first person who answered. Congratulations, Jacqueline Kent. Jacqueline Kent, congratulations. You are the winner. Jacqueline, I need to know what dealership you're from.
That was fast.
Down your name. Jacqueline, I don't know. Kent. She can yell at me later. The answer was 21 times more likely to get a hold of a person if you get with them within 5 minutes as opposed to 30 minutes. Congratulations, Jacqueline Kent, or Jacqueline, I'm not really sure. She's going to write in and let me know what dealership she's from so I can give her a proper congratulations. Now, audience, I know your name's not Jacqueline Kent. Neither is mine. You know what? We weren't winners today, but it's okay. Come on back to another Digital Airstrike webinar, and who knows, that could be the day you win a super cool prize on a Digital Airstrike webinar. But for right now, Jacqueline Kent, you are our winner. She is from Continental Toyota. Congrats. Huge congrats. I'm very, very curious to know how that wonderful month of Response Path is going to work at your dealership. So email me directly and let me know, Eliana at Digital Airstrike. I would love to know what kind of response you had with 1 free month of Response Path, because I know it helps a lot of dealerships, and we want to know how it works out for you. Now, if you want to know more, you can always check out digitalairstrike.com to find out more about Response Path. All right, Jason, you ready to answer some questions from the audience?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know you are. Okay, good. Now that we're on to this slide, let me scroll up because we had some great questions that came in from the audience. Our first question is from Anthony. He was very patient because he sent this in quite early. Anthony says, do you quote lease and finance payments? And how far does your BDC negotiate the deal? He's not the only one that kind of wanted to know that, because we also had Allison who wrote in, and she said, your BDC, is it cradle to grave, or are you just doing appointment setting? And then, you know, she had some follow-up questions too, which I'll get into a little bit. So Allison and Anthony both want to know, how do you
I'll jump right into that.
Share? Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. So essentially, I'm at a high volume store, so we found it to be more effective to do appointment setting. Actually, I have 10 people in this location, 4 in my Nanuet location. So, you know, we're handling probably about 3,000 prospects a month, you know, between those 10 people. As far as pricing, we a little bit negotiating, but not really, because we set up aggressive pricing in those price emails that go out automatically. And I've trained them with some word tracks. When people ask about pricing, you know, they say, hey, we did a lot of research and we know this is a really great price. Do you not think it's a great deal? And that's kind of like how we approach them when people want to negotiate. And then we wait to see what they say. And then we could rebuttal based off of what they respond. Sometimes it's just a question. We assume when someone asks you, is that your best price? We always assume that they're trying to haggle or it's an objection. And actually, I was shocked when I found about 20% of the time, 25% of the time when I say, yeah, that is my best price. You don't think it's a great deal? And they'll go, no, it is. I was just asking. And you go, oh, I don't blame you. You took a shot. And you move on, you know? So that's, you know, as far as pricing. And if someone wants to negotiate, then that's when they bring it to me or a desk manager or whoever you want and say, hey, this guy offered this or that. And that's when we get some intervention to help out.
I love that. All right, Anthony, if you have a follow-up question, get that question into me. I would love it. Actually, Allison did have a follow-up question. She said, how do you handle spiffs or assign leads? And actually, I think... Jason, he wrote, I know every state's employment laws are different, but how do you pay your BDC staff? So kind of the same thing. We were wondering, you know.
I get asked that a lot. Yeah, how do I pay? The answer is it depends on the volume of your store, right? So if you got a high volume store, you're going to pay a smaller commission because there's so much more opportunity. And if you're a low volume store, then you might have to pay more per commission. And when I say commission, I pay for the show, and then I pay for the sold. So, you know, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what I pay online, but, you know, it's tailored based on, you know, how much do you think they should be able to earn, and then you got to work your plan around that. So it depends on the volume that they're handling. And then I also have monthly bonuses. And, you know, you can base it on how many cars are sold. I like to base it on how many shows they have at the end of the month. You know, 60 shows get you this, 80 shows get you that. You know, you have some stair steps for them to achieve. And working on a fast start bonus. You know, similar like you would for a salesperson pay plan. You know, you just tailor it to a BDC rep. So we're working on that now as a nice, what would be appropriate fast start bonus.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Allison, for the great questions, and also to Jason. I appreciate it. Now, Anthony, from the first question, he did have a follow-up question. He said he wanted to make sure, do you quote finance payments?
Yes. So all of my quotes do not include tax and DMV fees. I'm on the border of New Jersey and New York, and tax rate, we deal with a number of different tax rates, right? I'm not going to assume where the person's going to register either. We deal with a lot of out-of-state customers. So we do quote payments and lease quotes in every one of our quotes. Like I said, the Response Logic product uses DealerTrack to pull in the rates and residuals, so I'm confident they're going to be accurate. And then you could mark it up. I mean, you could say mark up whatever buy rate plus 1%. You could determine what rate's shown, and that's what I do. And I do all my leases, fees down. You got to pay your bank fee, doc fee, tax motor vehicle up front and get that payment. But yeah, I definitely do that to give them an idea, and then it starts the conversation and go from there.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. All right. Great questions coming in from the audience still. So everyone who's asked questions, sit tight. We're getting to all of them. All right. Next question comes in from Don. He sent this question right before you started talking about Response Logics. So he said, what are you using to generate price and payment quotes? And then you started talking about Response Logic. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything else about it, but I hope I'm assuming correctly, that you use a tool like that, not just to save time and to help your sales staff stay on top of things, but it's also, kind of to help make sure that no lead goes unanswered too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing slips through the cracks when you automate it, right? So sometimes, you're as good as your staff could be, maybe they come in late, something happens, and they're not responding in a quick enough time.
Or they're sitting
that automated one's going out.
Yeah. That's what I assume.
Yeah, that's going out, and obviously for the 180 days of follow-up, it's going out. But yeah, I think it adds a lot of value. It's a professional. I showed you the presentation. In fact, when I take a phone up and they want a price, I won't tell it to them. They're not allowed to verbally tell it to them. They have to email it to them. So that's kind of part of my process with phone ups, because it's much more professional having that presentation with the alternatives and the payments, and it's in writing. There's no he said, she said, right? You said a lot of people said, Shirley said if I come in, you sell to me for $19,000. Meanwhile, Shirley said $19,995. So but what are you gonna do? Call the customer a liar at that point? So it was a bad situation to be in. So when it's set in writing, there's no he said, she said. It's in writing. You just pull up the email. Here's the price. So we found a lot of value in that. And as far as pricing, I don't just sit there and determine it. I will mystery shop my competition. I will look on third-party sites and TrueCar and so forth. And then I'll sit down with my desk manager, my GSM, and say, what do you want to go on this car? What do you want to go on that car? And we'll look at our inventory and supply and demand. And we'll come up with a plan, and we'll review it every couple of weeks, or whatever you think is appropriate. I make them all expire in 1 week, so that price quote expires in 1 week or the end of the month. That's what I put in the disclaimer.
Oh, they have expiration dates too. All right. Don, thank
absolutely.
you.
You want to create some urgency to come in right away. So I've seen people do it in 3 days. That's not a bad idea either.
Especially if it's the end of the month. All right. Don, thank you so much. If you have a follow-up question, let me know. But Jason, I have to say, if you've been using Response Logics for 8 years, obviously you feel it's giving you some great value. So thank you so much for letting me know about that. All right. Next question comes in from Kenneth. We just have, a few more questions, then we'll start closing out the show. All right. Kenneth wrote in, would you make texting through CRM mandatory? My CRM has the opt-in, and a lot of times we get opted out. What do you do with texting? Do people use their own cell phones or?
No. You don't want your staff using their personal phones. So good question. You obviously want it to be controlled so that you can see what's being written, and you have to prove that the customer opted in or had those opt-out messages in every message you sent them. So you definitely want it on record within either your CRM, or there's some outside companies that do this as well. I make it mandatory that we attempt to text everyone, and if they don't want to opt in or they opt out, that's fine. But I'm going to try. And I was surprised at how many people did opt in. Not everyone, obviously, but more often than not. We have more people that opted in than opted out.
All right, Kenneth, Stay the course, man. You got this. Texting is the way to go, definitely. All right, if you have a follow-up question, Kenneth, let me know. All right, next question comes in from Don again. Don says, how much input do you have in the selection and the decision to keep or drop lead sources? Very interesting question. And how do you make those decisions? Now, you said earlier, some leads are stronger than others. I'm curious, when you said that, did you meant the lead source or like trade-in leads versus?
Well, good question. I meant a couple of things. I mean, obviously the intent is different based on the lead source, whether it be a trade-in lead, a credit app lead, or inventory lead, but also different where the lead came from, what source will have different closing ratios. And for instance, a third-party lead typically has the lowest closing ratio, usually around 6% to 8%, and that's because those are usually higher funnel customers. They don't know what brand they want, so they're sending leads out to 3 or 4 different manufacturers, trying to figure out what they want. So they're higher up in the funnel, you're less likely to close that, right? Then they narrow it down to the manufacturer, and usually you'll have like a 10% to 12% close ratio on something from your manufacturer's website. They narrowed it down, and they're just trying to get some more information on which model and which trim level, right? And then when they get to your website's always your highest closing ratio, or any widgets that you have embedded on your website, essentially the same thing. And that typically we see around like a 15% closing ratio because they know what car they want, and they're just trying to determine who has it, basically. And so that's the bottom, that's the lowest in the funnel. So you're going to have different closing ratios based on that. So you got to keep that in mind. You can't compare your website versus, a third-party site and say, oh, they suck, my website's so much better. Yeah, of course it is. But yeah, essentially you are looking at closing ratio, and if you're getting less than 6 to 8% of a third party, then maybe you want to put that money somewhere else. So I think it's also important to note on a new and a used car, you kind of got to separate the closing ratio on new versus used, because someone puts a lead on a new car, and even if you don't have it, you could get it, right? You could locate it, you could factory order it, but on a used car, sometimes if it's a unique car, you're a Honda store and you have like a late model Mustang convertible, well, it's not so easy if you get another one of those, right? So it's very hard to switch into something else in your stock. You may not have another convertible to switch into. So you got to consider that. And the other thing is, on a used car lead, you'll get, multiple people, 3, 5, sometimes 10 people put a lead on the same car. You can only sell it to one person. So your closing ratio is going to go down. So it looks like you only closed 10% of that, 1 out of 10 on that, but you couldn't close those other 9 people if it was a off-brand type car that you don't really have something to switch them into. So you got to kind of hold down to accountability that your used car lead ratio may be a little bit lower as well because of that.
Now you, and we said this before, you are in the New Jersey, New York, very close to that border area. So I assume you pay a lot for your leads just because you have so much competition, correct?
Yeah, I mean, with a third-party source, they usually have a flat rate.
Yeah.
But
so
when it comes to like
what I wanted to know, is
pay-per-click,
there like a price, like you will definitely not pay that much for a lead? Do you have that worked out?
Yeah, I mean, not really, because if I see value, I'll spend a little bit more, right? That's why people will go to Nordstrom's and buy a $40 T-shirt instead of going to Kmart and getting a $12 one, right? They see the value in it. Maybe it's better quality, they have a better experience. There's reasons why they do that, right? Okay. So, that's the way I look at. I always assign value to price. It's got to go hand in hand, right? That determines. But I mean, things are more expensive here. It's a very competitive market. If you dropped a pin on my store and drew a 25-mile radius, there's 23 Honda stores in that 25-mile radius. It's insane. I consider this the most competitive market in the country, North Jersey. Yeah.
I know, babe. All right, Don, if you have a follow-up question, let me know. We'll get to it right away. But right now, we're going to get to a couple questions from Anthony. Different Anthony from the first question, by the way. Different Anthony. There's lots of Anthonys in the automotive industry. All right, Anthony, here we go. When you get to work, what are the first things you focus on as a BDC director? Oh, I feel like your list is so long.
It's funny because before we started, we talked about this, and I said, I always get asked that question.
Don't ask that question. You told me not to ask that question, Anthony. I just want you to know, and I asked it anyway. Just don't hate me. But is there one thing you do every morning that you check on first thing? I mean, other than emails?
Yeah. The first thing, so I like to start my day before business hours. So it means if your store opens at 9 o'clock, I make a requirement that everyone's at their desk by 8:45.
Okay.
right? And that's because, again, speed is king, and I want to be the first person to call that lead, right? So that's one of the things I do. And the first thing I do personally is open up the CRM and make sure those leads are being handled. Make sure if someone called out, those leads aren't just sitting there, there's no one working them. So to me, that's the first thing I do every morning is check the leads and make sure the response is there. Right. And then from there, I want to check those hot prospects or those hot customers that left me voicemails and emailed me in response to my follow-up emails. So then I'll jump into my voicemails, my emails, and try to get back to those people as soon as possible. And then from there, there's a million things I do.
Every day is different,
training,
you told me, right?
Yeah. Every day is different. Every day is different list of challenges, whether it be working on my marketing and what kind of advertising that we're going to do, to training. I'm also involved with service as well as sales, so I'm doing a lot of stuff. I'm bouncing back and forth between the service and the sales department.
Right.
So there's a list of things, but I would say the priorities and the leads and getting back to people that are wing the response on me personally. And then at some point in the day, training and looking at metrics and making sure my staff's doing the right thing, and whatever comes.
And somewhere in there, he gets coffee too. All right. A follow-up question from Anthony. He wants to know, are you currently using video in your follow-up process? I know we didn't talk about that.
Good question. I am a big believer in video, and I'm currently trying to get video on every page on my website right now. But that's one area that I don't do that I like to do, but we are not using video in our emails. We have some tools that will allow us to do so, but I haven't made it a requirement yet. I'm working on a lot of other things. I don't want to ask too much of myself at once, but It's definitely a good idea. It's definitely a good idea, and if you have the ability to do so, do so. We handle, like I said, 3,000 prospects, so it's, for me, time consuming is one thing. I'd rather have quality is important, but for me right now is the response time of 3,000 leads is a challenge, so I'm focusing on that. But yeah, it's definitely a good idea, maybe a later follow-up to do that, and yeah, I recommend it if you could do it.
Okay. Anthony, thank you so much for the great question. Okay, one more did sneak in from Steve. Steve said, how many is too many leads per BDC rep?
Yeah, that's another question I always get asked, and the answer is it depends. Right?
What?
It depends on a number of things. It depends on, one, how qualified you rep. Some reps could handle more leads than others, right? So only you know that, right? Some are just faster at it, they're quick typers, and in fact, in my interview process, I always ask people if they know how to type and how many words per minute, and that's the reason I want to know how much they can handle, right?
Look,
the other thing
I'm
is,
a pretty good typer, but I don't know how many words per minute I can type.
You know what? 95% of the time, the person doesn't have an answer. They don't know. Very rarely they know, and I'm considering having them do a quick typing test in my interview. That's actually something I've been considering I might start doing. But moving on, yeah, and there's free ones that you could do it in like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, so it's not time consuming. But the other thing is, what other responsibilities do they have? Are they just handling leads, or are they handling phone-ups as well? Are they doing lease maturities? Are they doing show and follow-up? So you got to factor that in too. So it's not just leads, they're doing other things. So my opinion is, depending on the rep, between 200 to 300 prospects total. That's leads plus phone-ups plus lease maturity. 200 to 300 prospects a month total. Any more than that, I think just not doing effective follow-up. So that's my answer, and that's if they're BDC centers. Now, if they're doing it from cradle to grave, I would say maybe half that, 100 to 200.
Okay.
Not half, but I'd say 100, 200 if they're doing cradle to grave, 200 to 300 if they're appointment setters.
Jason, does it hurt being so amazing? You are amazing, and
You're making me blush.
Oh, come on, stop. I'm already thinking forward to what your next digital airstrike topic could possibly be. I seriously think
How do I top this one?
7 at least different topics that I came on just during your own topic. You really just... It's been a long time since I've had a webinar that was this good and this amazing, and
Thank you
nailed it. First, by the way, audience, first webinar Jason Cohen has ever done, not just for me, but for anyone. So Jason, nailed it. By the way, Dusty wrote in, amazing. Thank you, Jason. And Don wrote in, great job, Jason. Very helpful.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Don. But
thanks for attending.
No, I'm already going to schedule you for another one. I don't know when it's going to be, but you watch. Anthony says, great job, Jason. Like a pro. And Lee said, best webinar ever. Jason, I could go on and on. Audience, and this will be on the next slide. We have a really fast 3-question survey. So please, one of those questions is, what did you think about today's presenter? I need to hear all the great comments you just gave me. Put them in the survey, please, people. And let me know what you thought of Jason's presentation today. I thought it was amazing, but actually they don't care what I think. They care what you think. So get those survey questions answered. Like I said, 3 short questions. One of them is actually for a free offer for a free report, a social media report, so we can see how you stack up to the competition. So if you want that, just say yes, and we'll get the magic started. And by the way, we did record this webinar. You will be getting a link later on today. So please feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. It was a great one. Refer back to it because I know you took pages and pages of notes. And for more information or to get that recording, just go to digitalairstrike.com/webinars, and you can also see our schedule for our upcoming webinars. As a matter of fact, to go to the next slide. You're so great to me. Okay, as a matter of fact,
sorry.
No, you're doing great. Are you kidding? You never have to apologize to me, Jason Cohen. Invitations will be going out soon for our very next Digital Airstrike webinar. It's going to be on June 6th, so put it on your calendar. 10 social media mistakes you're probably making right now. I know you can't even imagine 10. Guess what? We're going to bring in some big guns. Joshua Moyer is the social media manager at Modern Automotive Network. He does social media over 100 different channels for 14 different dealerships. He's going to sit here and tell us if you are missing huge opportunities to reach new car buyers and service customers. Oh my goodness. He's going to show us how his dealership's social media strategies sell more. And he's also going to show you 10 mistakes your dealership is probably making right now on social media. You don't want to miss this. Those mistakes might be impacting whether customers are choosing you over your competition. Ouch. So put it on your calendar now. You can register at digitalairstrike.com/webinars right now, or you can wait for the invitation to get to you. Our weekly broadcasts are 12 noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, or 9 a.m. Pacific. And like I said, to find out more or to sign up, go to digitalairstrike.com/webinars. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding our webinar series, please let me know. I'm on all the automotive social networks. Or you know what? You can find me anywhere online, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. Just email me directly. It's so much easier. You can get in touch with me at eliana@digitalairstrike.com. I'd love to hear from you. But for right now, on behalf of Jason Cohen and all the good folks over at Digital Airstrike, please allow me to thank you so very much for spending this time with us today. And I hope to see you all on another webinar in Digital Airstrike's continuing education series. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.